Okay. Greetings of peace, love, and light, and welcome to Divine SunRays, where we inspire you to discover your multidimensional self. I'm your host, Robyn Ringgold, and I just want to let you all know that we'll be taking live questions from the Greetings of peace, love, and light, and welcome to section only, where we inspire you to discover your multidimensional self. I'm your host, Robyn. Sorry. Okay. Our special guest today is Jasiri Nkalati, and Jasiri was trained and certified in Hatha Vinyasa Yoga in 2013 under the guidance of internationally recognized yoga teacher Faith Hunter. She's 5 years of teaching private, studio, and corporate class, including NASA Goddard Fitness in Maryland, Kaiser Permanente in Virginia, and Wilkie Farr and Gallagher in DC. She graduated from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition in New York in 2012 and provides comprehensive health coaching to women, both nationally and internationally, that are passionate about living a full life, but also struggle with emotional and addictive behaviors connected to food, mind-body awareness, and self-worth. That's awesome. Currently, you can participate in Jasiri's online yoga classes at www.yogagreenbook.com. So I really was interested in interviewing Jasiri today because, okay, like we all know that, about yoga and people have been practicing, but, how does yoga fit in with this kind of ascension that we're experiencing with this new energy that the planet is bringing forth, that our bodies are changing, we're becoming more light filled. So I wanted to kind of talk about yoga in the context of that new energy and with kind of the ascension process that we are going through. So welcome, Jasiri.
Thank you so much for having me, Robyn.
Absolutely, absolutely. So some of us know, and some of us may not be aware that the energy on Gaia is completely changing. And a lot of us are having ascension symptoms. We are needing to ground more. We're needing to deal with energy in a whole new way. So could you just talk a little bit to start us off with, how can yoga help with managing this new energy that is coming into the planet?
Well, before I get to that question, I want to say that, because this is being recorded live, that
Sure.
What I have to share, it's really important for me to know that what I have to share is based on my direct and personal experience with the practice of yoga, and also with ascension. And so I'm just sharing what I go through, or what I've been going through with you all.
Absolutely.
But what Robyn is saying is very true. There is a shift, a great deal of shift of energy that has been happening, that's pretty much accelerated. I feel it. I'm sure a lot of us feel it, actually. And I think, generally speaking, most of us, we feel something. We may not be able to,
articulate it, yeah.
That something is, but we are feeling differently, internally, externally, in our day-to-day. And so ascension is just essentially moving or transitioning from one level of understanding and experience to another, and ultimately towards a higher level of understanding and experience, life experience.
Yes.
Self-experience, attunement. So it's really moving beyond the physical borders or physical limitations of what we can experience with our five senses, into higher dimensions. And I'll say this, even though I have a personal relationship in that space, I still can't articulate a lot of what I'm experiencing or what's happening.
Right.
So it's happening. But we'll talk about some of that a little bit later on. Yoga helps us with the ascension process, in that First of all, to understand what yoga is, simply put, it's a tool or technology of well-being. It helps us to connect with the roots of our being. And at the very root of our being, essentially, we're all the same. We're all sort of like the same makeup in terms of how we come into form. And so this technology helps us to understand how to integrate the parts of us that may seem separate so that we can be more in alignment or have more understanding or better understanding of what happens to us when we are experiencing ascension processes, right? Yoga covers not only the physical aspect, like just the body, but also regards the breath. It also regards the mind, and ultimately our spiritual happenings,
Yes.
right? And so it's, like I said, it's a really comprehensive tool and practice so that we can come from like sort of like the gross matter, the physicality of things, and begin to refine ourselves to the point where we can experience and identify the subtlety of life, like the subtle energies that you cannot see, you may not touch, you may not hear, you may not taste, but they're real. They're just as real. So the practice of yoga can help us to, integrate all of those systems so that we're not separate, we're not divided, we're ultimately moving as one whole unit. And if we can do that, then imagine what we can be able to do with another being who's also doing that, and then another being who's also practicing that. It's all about coming together as a collective and tuning into that higher space, that otherworldly, higher dimensional space, so that we can be freed up. Like we all say, we want to be freed up, so we can be freed up.
Exactly. Yeah, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the process that I've been going through or have been through. A couple of years ago, I was going out in the park like I always do. But all of a sudden I just started, like, my heart chakra felt like it was like bursting open. Like I would just start having like breakdowns in the park, but I don't mean breakdowns like sadness, but just complete joy that like I could not explain.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I was like, something is happening. Something's happening here that's different than what was happening to me or that I've ever experienced before. And there's a new energy coming into my body. There's a new connectedness that I'm feeling. Like I was kind of like, something's going on here. So as a result of that, I started doing, searching and looking at YouTube videos and trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? So we kind of all have heard that, 2012 was coming and, it was going to be the end. But really it was a new beginning, right? It was a new beginning to allow us to take in this new light that was coming and to kind of awaken us from the slumber that all of humanity has been in for eons, right? So it's really like a new day and age, and that can be experienced in many ways. So like the energy that I was feeling, or, all of a sudden life, the things that you enjoy doing, you no longer can do. Relationships, everything is kind of like coming up to say, if this doesn't serve me, it's not going to stay.
Right.
So some people don't know that this is the ascension process. This is what's happening. There's a new energy and you can't exist in that old state anymore. So I just kind of wanted to kind of frame kind of what's happening. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just that. It's what you're describing, is that the old ways no longer apply.
Yes.
If you're experiencing something that's unfamiliar, something that, feels like a challenge, especially when I mentioned it's accelerated, right? So you can be, in my personal experience, is that the discomfort, what was once comfortable, it just no longer applies. Like I feel more and more weight and as being, like, I describe it, I feel like if like I'm being moved through like a juice press or something.
Yes, yes.
There is this weight, and it's not, and you know what, I feel it and I go through it and I move through it, but then I know that it is pushing me along to be more than.
Yes.
I know that with certainty. It's very uncomfortable a lot of times, but I know that there's purpose behind it. So if you feel that in your own life, if you feel like, oh my God, why? I don't understand. Why are things falling apart? Yeah, things need to fall apart. Things need to come undone. That's why I say life is about unfolding, so that something else can be born, something else can be, experienced. And just have to trust. A lot of times, I think the trust factor is, it waxes and wanes or whatever, or it comes and goes, likely because we rely so heavily on the ego.
Yes.
The physicality that is us, and we think that we're in charge a lot of times, and we're not. What I am discovering. And so it's the coming back to trust. It's really this awareness and this acknowledgement that, in fact, we are not, in control of the whole. We're not in control of most things, that's happening. We have to learn to trust the process. We have to learn that there is a higher force, a higher divinity, or however way you want to look at it or call it, that is supporting us in this forward momentum.
And I think it's important to note that once we do tap into that higher energy, and once we do let go of all that's holding us back, then we move into a space where we can create our reality. Then things don't have to happen to us, right?
Right.
And the other thing I wanted to say about what you said was, you said, things are kind of unfolding and kind of falling away. And, that's happening on a personal level in people's lives, and then it's happening in the collective. So I think that's a perfect description of what's happening in our society. We're seeing that, everything's coming out, everything's being shown, exposed, so that it can be dismantled. And so that's also happening in our personal lives. And if we try to hold on while it's being pulled away, it's not going to be pleasant.
Yep. Plan to suffer longer.
Yes. So true. So true. So true. So let's kind of talk about how the chakras are involved in this whole process of letting go and unfolding and growing.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with chakras, energy wheels is a kind of a loose translation of that word. It just means that you have energy centers along the body, starting at the base of the body. Sometimes, it's associated with the feet, the actual literal base of the body, or the base of the spine. But either is fine. And then it works its way all the way up to the crown of the body, or the top of the body, or the head of the body, at its other end. And so each of the chakras are connected to a particular function, so that ultimately, we can look at the different parts of ourselves, if you will, and notice what needs tuning, what needs fine tuning, what needs a little bit of finessing, if you will, or dialing down.
Right.
We understand what balance is, and in the space of balance, nothing necessarily needs to be tweaked. But sometimes something can be underactive, and other times something can be overactive. So the chakra systems, ideally and ultimately, should be balanced, so that, we're moving through what I would call the turbulence of life, right? So we're moving through sort of like the ebbs and flow of life, with a level of groundedness, with a level of calm, with a level of awareness. And that way we're not reactionary, we're responsive. And so the first chakra is the base or the root chakra, and that is connected to our, literally, our physicality, the things that we feel secures us, you know, our shelter, our actual body, you know, the health of the body, our finances, perhaps, these things that are tangible that gives us security.
Right.
Right. And then when you're moving up, you're moving to the sacral chakra, or the second chakra, which deals with the water element, the flow, the creative energy, and that creative energy is also literally and actually connected to the creation process, right? The conception and birth, right?
Yes.
And so there's that. And you move up, and then you go into the solar plexus region, which is just below the level of the navel. And that has to do with the will.
Above the navel.
Or above the navel.
Right.
And that has to do with the will. Our ability to tap into and utilize our will, which speaks to self-confidence and a surety, a level of sturdiness within the self. Like, I know me, so I know how to move in my life, right? And then we're moving up into the heart space. Now, the heart space is a really, I don't know what word you want to plug in there. I'm going to let you plug in that word, but it connects the base and the higher extremities. And so it's a really unique chakra in that way, that it integrates, right? I guess the higher aspect of self with the lower aspect of self. The heart space it's a really obvious chakra, right? Like, with emotions, Shakti, you know, which doesn't turn off. You know, it's always on. The emotions always happening. Sometimes it's very loud, sometimes it's very quiet and subdued. And so there's that, right? And then moving up to the throat chakra, which has to do with our capacity to utilize our voice to speak truthfulness, or to express, right? Express ourselves. And then we're moving up to the Ajna chakra, the third eye. You might have heard third eye, or the point just between the brows. And so that one connects us to our, I want to say, intuition. It's like seeing and knowing without the physicality of things, like without having to attach to, like, if I pick up this pen, I know I have this pen, right? But, and it's, you know, we can describe it and we can feel how it, you know, but with our intuitive knowing, we know things, sometimes we know things in a tangible realm sometimes before it occurs. We know what's right for us, what resonates for us, so that we also know what doesn't resonate as well. Like, we have to, so we can make choices not based on other people's belief systems or whatever, like emotions or judgment or thoughts, we know for ourselves, right? That's Ajna. And then ultimately moving up to the top of the head, the crown chakra, the portal, if you will, or the doorway to universal consciousness, right? Like that, the higher dimension or the higher plane, where we're not engaging the ego, which has to do with compartmentalizing. We are in fact connected to eternal, all-knowing, all-pervading oneness, essentially, where we can connect to each other without discrimination. So it's important to know these different systems, obviously, like I said, so that, you know, as you begin to you know, bring harmony to them or bring balance to those different areas that you're living ultimately like your most purposeful, on purpose life.
Right, right, right. And I'm sorry, let me take
No.
it. So the one thing that I thought was like really crucial in this kind of ascension process, and some people call it moving from 3D to 4D to 5D. You know, there's all kinds of different names, but essentially we're being called to heal, right? We're being called to become or merge with our higher selves. And it's part of that process of healing is knowing that, okay, when we experience trauma in our lives, that gets stored in our bodies. So for instance, you know, if you've had sexual trauma, you know, your sacral chakra is probably all blocked and jacked up, right? Or if you don't speak up for yourself, or you have this wonderful talent, but you're not sharing it with anybody, you know, then you start getting throat chakra blocked. So all kinds of different things can block our chakras. So part of this whole process of us, you know, kind of ascending to our higher selves and getting out of this kind of 3D world that we've been suffering in, it's really unblocking all of those chakras so that we can allow this energy to kind of flow. And once that crown is open and your third eye, you know, that just flows right in. And we start experiencing an entirely new existence, which is so amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, so how does doing the actual asanas, how do the asanas actually help us to open those chakras or balance them?
Okay, absolutely. While I was listening to you, for anybody who's checking this later or who is tuning in right now, a really good way to understand the chakra and how to open, you know, how to gain access to each of them. There's a show called the Last Airbender. It's a cartoon. It's the best.
Yeah.
But you can check it on Netflix, I think, or, you know, Amazon Prime. But watch that. It's incredible in terms of helping you to understand, like I said, how to land, connect to those spaces, access them, and then ultimately free yourself up through that crown chakra.
Yes.
But as I mentioned before with yoga, you know, it's an actual and literal system. It's a technology for well-being, like as your cellular device is a technology for communication, right? That's its function. The yoga, you know, which I call it a life practice, is technology for your entire system, to enhance your entire system. And so Robyn's question is, you know, well, how does that help us gain access to, you know, the chakras, right, Robyn?
Yes. How do the asanas help us to balance and open up those chakras so that we can bring that new light and energy in?
Right. So asana practice is another way to understand asana is posture. You're moving through poses. And so this particular practice, even though you're using your body and you're moving through different shapes or postures, you have to incorporate and invite the breath. That's a really primal part of asana practice, or posture practice. Your breath is first. Your posture is second. So yoga means, you know, to yoke or to integrate. You're binding the body, you're binding the breath and the mind. And so if all three systems are in fact working together, then you can learn to, so many different directions I can answer this. You can learn to feel, I want to say feel. You can learn to feel the different parts of you, right? Like the energy that governs the base chakra, the energy that governs the sacral, the solar plexus, and so on and so forth. Because starting with the breath, right? Starting with the breath, actually starting with the mind. Mind deals with attention, right? So if you're bringing your attention to something, which would be your breath, and what do we mean by bringing your attention to the breath? Noticing the breath, right? Noticing the quality of the breath. If you can notice the quality of the breath and you know you need a bit more or a lot more, or you need to dial it a little bit, like you know how to manipulate it for yourself so that when you're holding a particular posture, you can be most supportive in that posture. Sometimes we're asked to hold postures, and in that instance, you can check in. You know, you can check in to what your body is feeling like. Are you feeling grounded in your base chakra? You know, are you feeling grounded at the bottom of the body, the soles of the feet? Is it connected? Do you feel connected to the ground plane, or are you still, you know, kind of lifted or flighty or
Right. Right.
You know, some postures, particularly like postures that requires for the chest to be exposed, receptive, or open, right? They are heart-centered postures to help you tap into or connect to the heart chakra, which, you know, I think it needs a lot of work for most of us. And so doing postures like back bends where you're having to extend yourself towards the back of your yoga mat or the back of the room or whatever, right? Like lifting the chest, creating space, removing obstruction. That'll help you to land into your heart space where you feel the heart chakra, and you can tune into whether or not it's collapsed, it's suffocated, it's blocked, there's resistance there. Your breathing and your holding that posture will help you to feel that, literally and actually.
Yes.
Some postures, I'll give you another example. It may be unfamiliar. It may be challenging. It may be your first time doing it, right? But let's say, you know, you're doing an arm balance, you know, for the first time. And a teacher's like, you can do it. I'm going to guide you step by step. I'm going to walk you through it, you know, and a teacher's giving you instructions on what to do. You have to feel in your solar plexus area, you have to feel in your gut.
Yes.
What's happening.
Yes.
Right? Like it's going to communicate to you, hey, you're actually not ready to go all the way. Just go a little bit. You know, like that's the calibration system. You know, the chakras are really systems that help us. They communicate, by the way. If you're willing and you're willing to listen, you can feel and, you know, and hear what is being communicated. Some, you know, in that instance where you're having to meet an arm balance, you might feel completely 1000% confident, and because of that, you're able to land that pose. You're able to get in it full on, and you're breathing and you're calm, steady. There also has to be a level of, like I said, groundedness. The heart space has to be receptive and open. Yes, I'm available to this. Yes, I'm enjoying this, right? And so that's how the physical posture practice or asana practice can help you to understand the chakras and what that has to, you know, and how that contributes basically to your life.
Yes.
On, off of the mat.
Yes. I like that, on and off. So it's interesting, in this kind of fifth dimensional talk, there are some additional chakras that people now are dealing with and working with and talking about. And I won't go into those, but I will post a link in the video in the comment section that just kind of talks about that. But one of those is the Earth Star chakra, and it connects us literally to Gaia. And one of our callers or our participants has a question: how can yoga facilitate grounding to Mother Earth as well as connect us with our higher selves? So I think you kind of answered, you know, about the crown, although I'll come back to that, but let's start with the Mother Earth. So how does yoga facilitate grounding to Gaia?
Well, there are different practices that yoga offers us, you know. I'm not sure if the caller has heard of like the 8 limbs but the 8 limbs of yoga gives you kind of like a breakdown, if you will, of what the practice encompasses. And as you begin to connect with the different aspects of the practice, which brings you ultimately to yourself, then ultimately you can do that, right? You can connect to Gaia, and then you can connect to the universal consciousness or oneness energy through that practice. So the first one is, the first limb is Yama, which deals with, moral self-conduct, basically. And the first one being nonviolence towards the self or others. And obviously that also implies kindness, like practicing kindness and compassion. And, and then the second limb moves to Niyama, which deals with that moral conduct and code, but also connected to, extending it outside of yourself,
Okay.
like in practice with others. Truthfulness is one of them, cleanliness, spiritual practices, a surrendering to God, studying the sacred text, or studying yourself,
Yes.
which is ultimate, right? So I'm saying those things to say that, like, as you study the different parts that yoga has to offer, then you can learn how you yourself connect to, well, ultimately self, and then ultimately to something like your question is to Gaia and, or, the oneness energy. But, it also takes you through asana, like we just discussed, like the physical posture. You have the pranayama, which is breath regulation, learning how to control your breathing such that you can optimize your life experiences. You can, like I said, be more responsive, less reactionary, especially when things are crazy, or or you're being challenged, right? In whatever instances, right? Then you have pratyahara, which is sensory transcendence, right? Learning how to just look at yourself in a really objective way, so that you know how to shift when necessary, right? Like you're not being pulled and tugged by instances. You're not being pulled and tugged by emotions, or, something someone said or something someone did. You can kind of step back because you're internal now, observing your external world in a more, with a level of awareness, right? And this is a constant practice. There is that, and then there is dharana, which is concentration, right? Like dealing with the mind is always on, the thinking is always going, just like the emotions, always on, right? If you can learn how to start to connect to the busyness of the mind, then you can cultivate concentration, which then helps you for the next level, which is meditation. A lot of times people they find meditation kind of inaccessible, or, somewhat of a, what's the word, Robyn? It's like
well, I mean, most people are always saying, oh, I just think too much, I have too many thoughts, I can't meditate, I don't know how to meditate. I hear that a lot.
Yeah. And by the way, the physical practice also helps to develop concentration, right? Imagine that you had to hold a handstand, or even a balancing posture, like warrior 3 on one foot, leg extended towards the back. Like concentration is being practiced as well. So each of these limbs are kind of like helping to groom you for the next level of practice or being. And so then you have meditation, which you've already dealt with, like the concentration piece, like learning how to sort of, I don't want to say quiet the mind, but that's what you'll hear a lot. I want to say, because people are like, quiet the mind, what is that? Like how? I will say that the thoughts are going, but you're not connected to them.
Mm.
And
The observer.
Yeah, you're observing them. You're less engaged in the thoughts, and so they're not a thing anymore. They don't have weight over you anymore in the way that they used to. Right? You're observing your thoughts rather.
Right.
And then eventually not. They just
Yes, yes. So we actually have another question from one of our viewers. She said that she's recently gone through a period of 3 days where her ego appeared to hijack her. She was the witness and the observer of this, but she just couldn't seem to rein it in. She's asking, what is your opinion as to why this happened? Is it an ascension symptom, or is it energy being stuck? And I'll answer as well, and if you want to go first.
Well, the first thing that came to mind is to not resist it. The resistance gives us like a tug of war kind of thing going on. You know, we recognize, oh, that's ego. All right, we can recognize that, but I think we want to be in flow. So I would say be with it, you know, spend time with whatever is happening. It goes, in my experience, it leaves quicker. It goes away quicker when I am with the thing rather than being resistant to what I'm experiencing.
So, I'm going to answer also from my own personal experience. So I feel like I've developed this tool belt since I've been kind of experiencing these different things. So in my tool belt, I have things like crystals. I have things like Gaia or trees. I go hug a tree. I go stand barefoot. I call in my guides, my angels. I burn Palo Santo, sage. You know, like it depends on like what's happening, but all of these things can be tools to kind of like, you know, get us back to that space of balance. And I found that when those things don't work, sometimes it can be an attachment. Sometimes it can be the collective. So we just had a recent event that was, you know, a lot of people are very distraught about. I personally don't watch the news, but I'm aware of what happened. But we don't understand that we are connected. We are living on a grid that is energetic, and our bodies are actually like, you know, attached to this grid. So when something like that happens, the collective energy affects everyone, which is why it's so important to keep our vibrations high and to really stay in that love and unity consciousness, because we are affecting things so that things like this don't happen anymore. But we kind of are trained to do the opposite, and the news and, you know, our whole matrix world wants us to keep in that kind of like, you know, lower vibrational state, because that's kind of how that whole world is fed, right? So sometimes it's, you know, if it's not one of your tools, it could be a collective thing happening, that an energy that you're feeling. It could be even like attachments, and that's kind of like a whole nother show that we could do just on attachments. But you can have an attachment from somebody giving you the finger that cut you off or something, and, you know, while you're driving. So it's like, we really don't understand this like interconnectedness and how many things really can impact our energy. So you've got to have some tools. And so another thing that came to mind is, you know, we just got out of this whole eclipse cycle. So the energies are very different when we're having like these astrological things happen too. So we have all these different things kind of coming in. So we don't have like, you know, tools that we can use. It's like, you know, it can become pretty difficult to, you know, center and ground and stay in that space.
Absolutely.
And so, go ahead.
And one other thing really quickly, I always advocate that you always have yourself, because a lot of times people say what they cannot do as a result of what they can't purchase or they don't have. Yeah. So always have your breath. As long as you're alive, you have your breath. And sometimes, and this has been my practice as of late, it's literally come to your breath, take a breath in, let it go.
Yes.
Do it again. Take a breath in.
Yes.
Let it go. And each time softening into that space. And you'll discover that it literally transitions you into a different space, energetic space. So,
yeah, I agree. Thank you. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we'd love to see you in action. If you would bless us.
oh, you are so funny. Okay. My socks off.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so what is it that I am doing?
Well, I mean, I think it'd be great. I mean, I think you're amazing, and when I see you, your postures on Facebook, I'm like, oh my goodness, one day I'm going to be able to do that. So, I mean, whatever feels good to you, whatever flow you want to get into, we're just going to sit back with our mouths open.
Now, you are so funny. Let me see. I'm gonna excuse me for those of you on the call. I'm gonna see if I can reposition the phone so you have a better view. Robyn, how's the view?
Wonderful.
Okay, good.
Wonderful.
Okay. So, and so you can see all of me?
Yes, we can. It's perfect.
Okay. So I'm just going to do a variation of sun salutations. And this is a really good, you can think of it as a warming technique for the body. So you can practice integrating breath, concentration, mind space to the body. And with a little bit of attention on the heart. So Robyn is gonna talk you all through this.
Oh, really? Uh-oh. No, I think we should all be still and breathe.
And I'm a huge advocate for touch while practicing, so you can massage, whatever it is you want to focus on, wherever it is you want to send energy to, you can just massage that part of your body. It's a good way of providing love and kindness, healing touch.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. You make it look so graceful and beautiful, and I know how difficult that is.
It's practice.
Yes.
Yeah, I just tell, I had a friend and she was like, oh, I do my sun salutations, but it doesn't look graceful and it's not fluid. And I'm just like, if you do that consistently, trust me, the body is wise.
Yeah.
It will memorize and it will adapt.
Wow.
And move as such. Yes.
Well, I'm really inspired by you, and I actually just signed up to take your classes on Yoga Green Book, and I just want to encourage some of our viewers and anyone else who views this video. What an awesome service Yoga Green Book allows you for. I think is it $19 a month. You have access to so many classes, not just yoga. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Different variety.
So and where else can they can our viewers find you?
So if you want to follow me on social media, if you're on social media, I'm at Body Priestess on my Instagram page. That's Body Priestess. And on Facebook, I am under Jasiri Nkalati, as Robyn has mentioned. Jasiri, and Nkalati is Nkalati. And really quickly, Jasiri Nkalati, it's like my given name. It's a name that was recently given to me about 3 years ago, and it's a medicinal name that speaks to the quality of my life, or how I am to show up in life.
Wow.
So that brings any curiosity. Jasiri means fearless, and so it's a daily practice.
Yes, I understand.
And where else? I did start a blog site, and that is www.bodypriestess.wordpress.com. I'm going to be developing it. If you would like to follow, that's awesome. I have a contact page if you want to provide me with your contact. I'm going to be on that particular site providing self-care tools or rituals rather for women specifically, sorry guys, that you can do that are integrative, right? Like nothing that you have to do outside of your already huge to-do list, but things that you can do that are integrative, that will just help to enhance how you experience life, things that are, small self-care practices, and also just a different perspective or a different spin on how you can occur in your life if you were to treat your own self as the shrine that you go to or the altar that you attend to. So it's the idea that you can also be a sacred space, your physical body, your mind space, your heart space, and practices on learning how to adorn that, right? How to adorn and how to treat that space. Yes. So yes. It's new, but follow me anyway.
Awesome. I'm excited for you. I am so honored that you agreed to be interviewed today on Divine SunRays. And you can find me on Facebook under Divine SunRays and on YouTube under Divine SunRays. So this will be posted on YouTube, as well as the Facebook Live will obviously be on my Divine SunRays. And I will include links in the YouTube video to all of your info, as well as I will comment on the Facebook Live with all of your links as well. So we look forward to having you back on the show, and maybe we can talk a little bit about some other cool stuff that we're into.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody who has tuned in, and thank you for everybody who's catching the after show.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, peace, love, and light, and I'm so happy to see you again, and I look forward to connecting very soon.
Thank you so much, Robyn. I appreciate being here.
Oh, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Peace.
Peace.